Courtney, that was bloody fantastic.
Thank you.
Let me tell you something, Courtney. Something has changed in you. Trust me. In the time you were on the show last year to now, your interaction with the audience, the confidence. I think this has been my favourite performance of you so far.
Quick heads up before the script. I checked the Simon Cowell broke down in tears over Courtney Hadwin claim, and it doesn't hold up. It's a viral storyline being recycled across dozens of low-quality TikTok/YouTube clickbait accounts. Word-for-word similar phrasing, invented quotes like "we failed her." But there's no reputable interview, transcript, or outlet confirming Simon Cowell ever said or did this. It's fabricated content, not news. What I verified is real. Courtney did quietly exit her major label deal when independent, teamed with producer Kevin Bowe, released her debut album Little Miss Jagged on September 12, 2025, performed at Carnegie Hall in 2024, collaborated with Steven Van Zandt on You Only Love Me When I Lie, released an Ozzy Osbourne tribute cover in November 2025, and is currently touring the UK. So I've kept your title as the hook viewers searching that phrase will click, but built the actual script around fact-checking that rumor and then telling her real, verified comeback story, which is honestly more compelling than the fake version. Here it is. Picture this. A tough, unshakable music mogul who's told thousands of hopeful singers no without blinking, who built an empire on brutal honesty, suddenly going quiet. Not because he's disappointed, because he's overwhelmed. That's the story spreading across social media right now about Simon Cowell and a girl he once called a lion. But before you believe a single clip of it, you need to hear what actually happened to Courtney Hadwin, because the real story is far more powerful than the rumor. And today we're separating fact from fiction while telling you the truth about her rise, her disappearance, and her stunning return. Let's start with what's actually been circulating online. Over the past year, dozens of short clips and thumbnail-driven videos have claimed that Simon Cowell broke down, choked up, or tearfully confessed regret over how Courtney Hadwin's career was handled. Some versions even include quotes supposedly said by him, admitting the industry failed her. Here's the problem. Not one of these claims traces back to an actual interview, a verified broadcast, or a credible entertainment outlet. No transcript exists. No dated appearance exists. What does exist is a pattern. The same story, reworded slightly, uploaded by unrelated accounts, all using nearly identical phrasing and invented dialogue. That's not journalism. That's a copy-paste rumor mill. And we're not going to pretend otherwise just because it makes a catchy headline. What we can tell you, with confidence, is the real story of Courtney Hadwin, because that story doesn't need to be exaggerated to be moving. It already is. Courtney was born in July of 2004 and raised in Heselden, a small former mining village near Hartlepool in County Durham, in the northeast of England. She grew up with her parents and two younger siblings in a modest household where music wasn't a career plan. It was just part of daily life. She sang around the house as a small child the way a lot of kids do, humming along to whatever was playing. But something shifted after she watched a young Connie Talbot perform on Britain's Got Talent. That was the moment singing stopped being background noise and started becoming a goal. By the time she was 9 or 10, Courtney had begun training her voice with real intention. At 11, while attending her local primary school and shortly after starting secondary school, she performed an open mic cover during a school lunch break. Someone recorded it, uploaded it to Facebook, and within days it had spread through her town. Classmates who'd known her as a quiet kid were stunned by the raw power coming out of her. That local viral moment pushed her to keep going. And she did, busking on street corners to help pay for vocal lessons, training at several small academies around County Durham, and slowly building a reputation as the girl with the voice that didn't match her age. In 2015, she entered Teen Star UK in Newcastle and made it to the final round with a cover of Bob Dylan's Make You Feel My Love. The next year, she won Hartlepool's Performer of the Year award and became a finalist in a regional talent showcase. That same year, she opened for Sister Sledge in front of roughly 18,000 people at a festival in South Tyneside, a massive stage for someone still years away from being able to drive. In 2017, she competed on The Voice Kids UK, landing a spot on Danny Jones's team and advancing all the way to the final before falling, just short of winning. Through all of this, her family made real sacrifices. Her father took on extra delivery work to help cover travel costs to auditions and lessons, and later, when opportunities pulled her across the ocean, part of the family relocated so she wouldn't have to navigate it alone. Then came 2018, and an invitation to audition for America's Got Talent, reportedly extended by producers scouting international talent rather than something Courtney's family sought out directly. At 13 years old, she walked onto that stage looking exactly like what she was, a shy, slightly awkward schoolgirl who seemed almost swallowed by the size of the room. Then, the music started. She launched into Otis Redding's Hard to Handle, and the transformation was immediate and almost unsettling in the best way. The nervous kid vanished, replaced by a performer with a gritty, weathered voice that sounded like it belonged to someone 3 times her age. Simon Cowell, a man notoriously difficult to impress, sat forward, visibly caught off guard. He told her that when she walked out she seemed like a shy little thing, but the moment she opened her mouth, she turned into a lion. Howie Mandel didn't just praise her. He hit the golden buzzer, sending her straight through to the live shows, and compared her voice to Janis Joplin. The clip exploded. Within days, it had racked up tens of millions of views, and by the time later rounds aired, that number had climbed into the hundreds of millions. She advanced through the quarterfinals and semifinals, eventually finishing 6th overall in the competition, a result that surprised a lot of people given how dominant her audition had been. But the placement almost didn't matter. AGT had done its job. It had introduced a British schoolgirl to a massive American audience, and shortly after the season wrapped, Simon Cowell signed her to his label, Psycho Music, in partnership with Arista Records. This is where the story most people know ends, and where the story that actually matters begins. At 14 years old, Courtney was suddenly navigating a world built for adults. Studio sessions, songwriting camps, media appearances, international travel, all while still technically a school kid. In interviews from that period, she described feeling like people around her were constantly telling her who she should be and what she should sound like. Producers wanted a polished pop soul crossover product. Courtney, still figuring out her own artistic identity, felt increasingly disconnected from the music being built around her image. She's spoken about sessions where she had to write toward themes she didn't fully believe in, about feeling like a brand being managed rather than an artist being developed, and about the exhaustion of being expected to deliver big, show closing energy week after week, while quietly struggling to feel like she had any real say in her own career. The pressure compounded because of her age. She was flying between the UK and the US, missing home, missing the ordinary parts of being a teenager, while carrying the weight of comparisons to legends and the commercial expectations of a major label deal. And slowly, without any dramatic announcement, she began to pull back. Social media posts became less frequent. Public appearances thinned out. She returned briefly for AGT, the champions in 2019, but by then it was clear her path had already started shifting away from the traditional industry machine that had signed her. There wasn't a scandal. There wasn't a public falling out. What happened was quieter and in some ways harder to watch. A talented teenager realizing that the version of stardom being built for her wasn't one she actually wanted, and needing time and space to figure out who she was without a label's fingerprints all over it. During this period, speculation naturally crept in. Fans wondered if she was ill, if there'd been a falling out, if she'd simply given up. None of that was true. What was actually happening was more mundane and more human. A young artist working behind the scenes, building trust with independent producers, and slowly reclaiming creative control piece by piece. The most important of those relationships was with Kevin Bowe, a Grammy-winning producer and songwriter known for his work with artists like Etta James and Lynyrd Skynyrd. Their partnership became the foundation for everything Courtney has released since going independent. Now here's where we get back to that viral rumor, because it's worth addressing directly rather than dancing around it. There's no verified account of Simon Cowell publicly discussing regret over how Courtney's career was managed. That doesn't mean their professional relationship simply vanished into some dramatic falling out either. The more accurate picture, based on how the industry actually works, is that Cowell's role was always that of a talent scout and label executive, not a personal mentor. He spotted her, signed her, and then, as is standard practice, moved on to scouting the next season's talent while she worked with her label's broader team. That's not a betrayal. It's simply how the machine operates. And it's part of why so many young stars, discovered on televised competitions, later describe feeling adrift once the cameras stop rolling and the deal is signed. The emotional arc people want to believe exists between the tough judge and the child star makes for a better story than the truth, which is that most of Courtney's real growth happened far away from Cowell entirely, on her own terms, with people she chose to work with. By the time she re-emerged publicly, Courtney was a different person, and more importantly, a different artist. Working independently with Kevin Bowe, she began writing and recording music that had nothing to do with radio-friendly polish. Songs like Monsters, Breakable, and That Girl Don't Live Here leaned into vulnerability, resilience, and identity in ways that felt distinctly her own rather than shaped by a committee of label executives. She's described this period as a kind of rebirth, a chance to finally understand who she was as an artist after years of other people telling her who she should be. That evolution culminated in her debut album, Little Miss Jagged, released independently on September 12, 2025. The record blends soul, rock, funk, and punk influences, and Courtney has been open about how personal the songwriting process was, describing the songs as coming-of-age tracks written during both the worst and best moments of her life over the past several years. She co-wrote every track with Kevin Bowe, and the album has drawn praise from music outlets for its genre-blending confidence and emotional honesty, a sharp contrast to the more conventional pop sound the industry originally tried to push her toward as a young teenager. One of the standout moments came with the single You Only Love Me When I Lie, a blues rock ballad that ended up featuring legendary guitarist Steven Van Zandt, known for his decades-long collaboration with Bruce Springsteen. Van Zandt has spoken about being a longtime supporter of Courtney's music, and his involvement on the track added another layer of credibility to her transition from viral talent show kid to a genuinely respected working musician. The album also features contributions from bassist Kevin Bowe himself, along with a rotating cast of accomplished session musicians, giving the record a live, organic feel rather than an overproduced studio sound. Beyond the album, Courtney has continued building her live reputation. In April of 2024, she performed at Carnegie Hall, handpicked by music executive Clive Davis to open a gala, where she delivered a tribute performance in front of major industry figures, a full-circle moment that showed just how far her artistry had come since that first shaky walk onto the AGT stage. In November of 2025, she released a soul-stirring cover of Changes, recorded live and released as a tribute following Ozzy Osbourne's passing, further cementing her range as a vocalist capable of moving between genres without losing her identity. She's also been candid, in a way that feels increasingly rare for artists who were famous as children, about the toll those early years took on her mental health. She's spoken openly about burnout, about losing a sense of control over her own career, and about the pressure of being expected to perform at a professional level before she was emotionally ready for what that actually meant. That kind of honesty has resonated with her fan base, which has grown to include millions of followers across TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, not because she's chasing viral moments anymore, but because she shares real, unfiltered glimpses into her creative process, her studio sessions, and her day-to-day life back home in the northeast of England. And that's really the through line of where she is now. Courtney didn't disappear because something tragic happened to her. She stepped back because she needed to, rebuilt her career from the ground up on her own terms, and came out the other side as a fully independent artist with a debut album, a growing catalog of respected collaborators, and a live show that's currently touring across the UK into 2026, with dates stretching from Glasgow to Manchester to London. She still calls County Durham home, still stays close to friends from her early years in Heselden and Peterlee, and by all accounts remains grounded in the same community that supported her before any of this started. So what actually happened to Courtney Hadwin? Not a tearful confession from Simon Cowell. Not some hidden industry scandal. What happened is something a lot less sensational and a lot more real. A teenager got signed too young, got pushed toward a sound that wasn't hers, quietly walked away from that machine, and spent years rebuilding her voice and her identity from scratch, on her own terms, with people she trusted. That's not a story that needs an invented quote or a fake viral clip to be compelling. It's compelling because it's true, and because it's a reminder of just how many young performers go through exactly this kind of quiet struggle once the cameras stop rolling and the real work of building a career actually begins. If you've been following Courtney's music since that first AGT audition, you already know the version of her story that matters isn't the rumor mill version. It's the one where a scared 13-year-old from a small English village turned into a fiercely independent artist who writes her own songs, tours on her own schedule, and shares a stage with legends like Steven Van Zandt, not because a label built her into that, but because she fought to become it herself. That's a far better ending than any fabricated tearful confession could ever offer. What do you think about Courtney's real journey versus the rumors floating around online? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, give a like and subscribe so you don't miss what we cover next. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please daub.